When Ben Harrison's bronze guard dog statue was labeled a dangerous threat by the HOA, he thought it was a joke, until they threatened him with fines and legal action. At the center of it all stood Linda Cross, the self-righteous HOA chairwoman, enforcing petty rules like they were sacred law. But Ben wasn't about to back down. With a clever media move and public outrage on his side, this retired veteran turned the tables. And trust me, the way justice finally struck will leave you cheering. Ben Harrison was a man shaped by hardships and survival. A retired veteran and widower, he had seen enough battles to last a lifetime. 10 years after losing his beloved wife, he lived quietly in the suburban neighborhood of Falls Creek, cherishing the little peace he could still find. Yet, that peace was quickly unraveling. The community had been hit by a string of burglaries, with reports of break-ins piling up. Neighbors were on edge, police investigations led nowhere, and fear was becoming a constant companion. For Ben, this wasn't just about stolen property. His home held the last tangible pieces of his past: military awards, sentimental heirlooms, and irreplaceable keepsakes from his wife. The thought of strangers violating his sanctuary, tearing through the memories he had built, ignited a fierce resolve within him. "If they want to be scared, let's give them something to be scared of," he muttered under his breath, one restless night after hearing the sound of trash cans being rummaged outside. The solution came to him like a flash of inspiration: a guard dog. Not a real one, too much upkeep, but a life-sized statue, something intimidating. He didn't want a friendly golden retriever. No, this had to be a beast. A massive, snarling Rottweiler with a menacing stare. Within weeks, the bronze sentinel was in place on his front lawn. Crafted with painstaking detail, the statue stood tall, muscles taut, teeth bared in a frozen growl. It was so lifelike that people passing by would slow down, instinctively wary. Some even crossed to the other side of the street. Kids who normally played loudly in front of his house now gave the property a wide berth. Ben, seated on his porch with a steaming cup of coffee, allowed himself a rare grin. "Yeah, that'll do." For a time it worked perfectly. The break-ins stopped. The neighborhood seemed calmer. For the first time in months, Ben was sleeping soundly through the night, but his triumph was short-lived. One crisp morning, while sorting through his mail, he found a formal letter from the Falls Creek Homeowners Association, HOA. It bore the official emblem and looked ominously bureaucratic. As he read the contents, his jaw tightened. "Your dangerous animal is in violation of community safety regulations. If not removed within 7 days, you will be fined $500 and face legal action." Ben blinked, reading it over again to make sure he wasn't hallucinating. "Dangerous animal?" he muttered, dumbfounded. "It's a damn statue." His hands trembled with a mix of disbelief and anger. They couldn't possibly be serious. The HOA, however, seemed hell-bent on treating his bronze watchdog like it was a living, breathing threat. "An actual threat," Ben growled through clenched teeth, "is their complete lack of common sense." Ben Harrison didn't want a fight. In his younger years, he had seen more than his share of battles, on foreign soil and in personal tragedy. Now, all he wanted was a quiet life with a sense of security. So, when the letter from the HOA arrived, he decided to handle it with reason and diplomacy. At the next community meeting, Ben stood before the board members, his voice steady but firm. He explained that the statue wasn't dangerous, that it posed no threat to anyone. It was a piece of art, for God's sake. "It's purely decorative," he reasoned, his eyes locking with those of the board's chairwoman, Linda Cross. Linda was everything you'd expect from someone who wielded HOA authority like a badge of honor. Mid-50s, immaculately dressed, with an air of self-importance that could suffocate a room. She adjusted her pearl necklace and flashed a condescending smile. "Rules are rules, Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice dripping with forced politeness. "We simply cannot take any risks regarding the safety of children in this neighborhood. Perceptions matter, you see." Perceptions. Ben nearly laughed out loud at the absurdity. Perception? So now we're policing people's imaginations? What next? Ban Halloween decorations because they're too spooky? But Linda wasn't budging. Neither were her cronies on the board. They nodded in unison, like a flock of smug pigeons, reaffirming the importance of community guidelines. The meeting adjourned with no resolution, and Ben walked out feeling the weight of a battle he hadn't expected. Word spread quickly, as it always did in small neighborhoods. By the next day, whispers followed him like shadows. He could feel the stares from neighbors who used to greet him warmly. "There goes that stubborn old man," someone muttered as he passed by. Others avoided eye contact altogether, as if he were a pariah. It didn't stop there. Someone had started a petition to have the statue removed. It circulated among the residents, gathering signatures faster than Ben thought possible. He overheard fragments of conversations at the local grocery store. "It's unsettling. What if it gives someone a heart attack? I heard it's traumatizing the kids. Honestly, what's he trying to prove with that thing?" Ben couldn't believe how quickly people had turned on him. These were his neighbors, people he had known for years. He had helped fix their fences, babysat their dogs, and watched over their houses when they were away. Now, they treated him like a threat. Sitting on his porch one evening, Ben stared at the statue, its bronze surface catching the dying light of the sunset. How easy it is for people to become judge and executioner, he thought bitterly. He had always believed that communities were supposed to protect and support each other. But this was something else entirely. He was being scapegoated, all because of a fear that didn't even make sense. "I didn't survive war to be bullied by a neighborhood association," he muttered under his breath, his resolve hardening. If they wanted a fight, they were about to get one. One sleepless night, Ben sat at his kitchen table, his mind racing. The walls of his once peaceful home seemed to be closing in. The neighbors' judgment, the HOA's stubbornness, and the ridiculousness of it all were gnawing at him like a persistent itch he couldn't scratch. It was too much. He needed an ally, someone who could help him fight back in a way that wouldn't involve endless legal battles or more HOA meetings filled with bureaucratic nonsense. That's when he thought of Denny. Denny Thompson, Ben's 30-something nephew, was a reporter for a local news outlet known for stirring the pot with human interest stories. If anyone could help shine a light on the absurdity of the HOA's actions, it was him. Ben hesitated for a moment, reluctant to drag family into the mess, but his frustration finally got the best of him. He picked up the phone. "Uncle Ben?" Denny answered groggily. It was well past midnight. "Denny, sorry to call so late, but I need your help." Ben's voice was heavy with exhaustion. "This damn HOA is out of control. They're trying to fine me over a statue, claim it's a dangerous animal." There was a brief pause on the other end. Then Denny let out a short, incredulous laugh. Wait. You're telling me they think your statue is a threat? Are these people serious?" "Dead serious," Ben replied grimly. "They're threatening court action if I don't remove it." Denny was silent for a moment, and then a mischievous energy crept into his voice. "You know what? Let's have some fun with this. Let's show the world just how ridiculous this is. Ever heard of the phrase public pressure?" The next morning, Denny and his media-savvy brain got to work. Together, he and Ben took several high-resolution photos of the infamous statue. One shot captured the bronze Rottweiler from a dramatic angle, as if it were ready to pounce, though the humor lay in the fact that it was frozen in time, immobile as ever. With a wry smile, Denny drafted a caption. "Behold, the dangerous beast that has HOA leaders trembling. A statue so terrifying, it's a public safety hazard." Thoughts? They posted it across various social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Within hours, the post took off like wildfire. Comments and reactions poured in faster than either of them could have predicted. "Seriously? It's just a statue. These people need therapy, not regulations. Oh, no. Hide the kids before the bronze monster gets them. Another example of HOA power trips. Bureaucracy at its finest." Influencers and local activists jumped on the story, tagging the post with hashtags like #BronzeBeast and #HOA Overreach. The humor was contagious, but beneath it lay a simmering anger, an indignation at how a group of petty bureaucrats could harass a man over something so trivial. The story gained enough traction that local news stations picked it up. Reporters interviewed Ben on his porch, standing beside the statue that had become a bizarre symbol of defiance. They framed the story as one of small-town overreach and the abuse of regulatory power. Ben, though reluctant to be in the spotlight, found himself speaking openly about his experience. "It's not just about a statue," he told one reporter. "It's about people being bullied in their own homes by arbitrary rules. This is my property, and I'm not hurting anyone. As the media frenzy grew, the pressure on the HOA intensified. Protesters began to appear outside the association's offices, and more specifically, in front of Linda Cross's house. Placards read, "Is art a crime now?" and "Free the bronze dog." Linda, who had once relished her position of authority, now found herself under siege. News crews camped outside her pristine home, and her phone rang off the hook with angry calls and emails. She tried to maintain her usual air of superiority, but it was slipping. Notices of public protest began to appear on her front door like graffiti, silent reminders that the court of public opinion had turned against her. The HOA board found itself in a corner. They couldn't ignore the growing outrage. Their own reputations were being dragged through the mud on live television and across social media. Under mounting pressure, they called an emergency meeting. For Ben, it was both surreal and satisfying. The very people who had dismissed him as a cranky old man were now scrambling to save face, and all it had taken was a single post, a photograph, and the collective voice of thousands fed up with bureaucratic absurdity. "Sometimes," he mused with a smirk, "you just have to let the internet do your dirty work." Linda Cross was not a woman accustomed to admitting mistakes. Her entire identity revolved around control, authority, and maintaining what she called order in the neighborhood. But the media storm had shattered her sense of invulnerability. With reporters swarming her property and her reputation in ruins, she could no longer hide behind the HOA's rules. It was time for damage control. At the next public HOA meeting, Linda stood at the podium, visibly uncomfortable. The crowd was larger than usual. Neighbors, journalists, and even a few protesters had packed the room, all waiting to hear what she had to say. Clearing her throat, she began in a strained tone. "I would like to offer my sincerest apologies to Mr. Harrison. The situation regarding the statue was, mishandled." The words felt like sandpaper in her throat, but the audience didn't care about her discomfort. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment of her public surrender. "The board has decided to revoke the demand for statue removal," she continued, forcing a tight smile. "Additionally, we will be revising the rule on so-called visual threats to ensure such misunderstandings do not occur in the future." From the back of the room, Ben watched with quiet satisfaction. He didn't need to gloat. The victory spoke for itself. As Linda finished her statement and hurried off the stage, the neighborhood had already moved on from her. All eyes were on Ben now, some curious, others remorseful. Over the following days, neighbors who had once whispered behind his back began showing up at his door, sheepish smiles on their faces. "Ben, I'm really sorry," said Carol, the woman who had signed the petition against him. "We got caught up in all that HOA nonsense. You know how it is." Another neighbor, Mike, offered to help repaint Ben's fence as a peace offering. Even the children, who had been too afraid to approach his house before, now wandered closer, fascinated by the statue they had once feared. "Wow, it's actually kind of cool," one of the boys exclaimed, daring to touch the bronze surface. His friends followed suit, laughing and pretending the statue was a real guard dog on duty. The street felt alive again. No more whispers, no more isolation. For Ben, this victory wasn't just about keeping a statue on his lawn, it was about reclaiming his dignity and his place in the community. He had stood his ground and won, not through violence or anger, but through resilience and a little help from his family and the power of collective outrage. As he sat on his porch one warm afternoon, sipping his coffee, Ben watched the neighborhood return to life around him. The statue stood proudly in its place, no longer a source of fear, but a quiet symbol of defiance against arbitrary authority. Children played tag near his yard, their laughter ringing through the air. One of the kids waved at him, and he waved back with a grin. The tension of the past weeks had dissolved, leaving behind a sense of renewal. "That's more like it," Ben thought with quiet satisfaction, leaning back in his chair. The Bronze Guardian remained ever vigilant, but now it guarded more than just his property. It stood as a reminder that sometimes even the smallest battles are worth fighting.